right, good evening, everyone. It is 6:02 p.m. I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. It's February 2nd, 2026, and this is our workshop meeting. Mary Ann, can I get roll call?
Mayor Young.
Here.
Vice Mayor Sartori.
Here.
Councilmember Brandon. Councilmember Painter.
Here.
Councilmember French.
Here.
Thank you. And as we are waiting for the consultant to present on agenda item 1, we are going to flip-flop agenda item 1 and 2, and we'll start tonight with item number 2, Village of Tequesta Utilities Department Backflow Prevention and Cross-Control Connection Program. Cross-Connection Control Program. Allison?
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. Thanks for having me tonight. Allison Felsberg, Utilities Director. So just a quick overview of the presentation. We'll review backflow prevention and cross-connection control. I know we had a presentation in March of 2025, so we'll just briefly go through that one more time. We'll review our current compliance and practices, then transitioning to what this program entails and an overview of this, and then how we plan to implement it with a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 approach, what those projected outcomes are, and then we will have some time for any questions. So just a review of what backflow prevention and cross-connection control are. A backflow device, typically you'll see it on a property, it comes up above grade, goes like this and goes back down. It has, usually it's like a double check valve assembly, so it'll have like little valves and everything on it. It kind of looks like that picture right there. And it's supposed to stop any water from going backwards through the pipe from the house. And typically the possibility of this can occur when there's a difference in pressure, like a water main break. All of a sudden you see a drop in pressure, there's still pressure at the house, so the water could siphon backwards. The real issue comes into play when you have pools, irrigation systems, facilities that do dialysis, any type of change in the water chemistry that could introduce bacteria or other chemicals back into the water main. So that's the whole purpose of what a backflow prevention device is for, is to prevent that backflow. They are required to be tested, so non-residential properties, which throughout this presentation we'll call commercial properties, they have to be tested annually, while residential properties are biannually or every 2 years. This is required under national law, but under Florida Administrative Code 62555360, and then we also have our Code of Ordinance Section 5186. And all of this is basically just to protect public health. And like I said, those opportunities for backflow are more concerning when people have swimming pools with direct plumbing, irrigation systems, fire sprinkler systems, private wells with shared plumbing, or reclaimed water supply. It kind of is a little bit of a gray area sometimes when you say somebody has a private well on their property, they abandon it. As long as we can ensure that there's no direct plumbing connection to that system, or a direct plumbing connection cannot easily be made, then we would not require a backflow prevention device. So current compliance and practices. Our current compliance is pretty low. You'll never see a utility typically with 100% compliance. It's very difficult to achieve. But obviously you want to try to get as close to 100% as possible. We currently use a provider called Aqua Backflow to administer the tracking and compliance for these backflow devices. So we do submit the data for all of our backflow compliance to FDEP annually, and all of that data is pulled from Aqua Backflow. So a resident or commercial property, they get sent a notice 60 days before their testing is due, and that's a mailed notice. And then if they still don't submit results, they get a second notice 14 days after that is due. We do email them, and we do call the residents as well, or the commercial property owner. But typically they'll get this notice, hey, your testing is due. They'll hire their own plumber to go do the testing on their device, and that plumber submits it to Aqua Backflow. The plumbers that are certified are all very familiar with the process. And then Aqua Backflow does track who is certified in our area, so they do have to submit their credentials for testing. So all of that's tracked through Aqua Backflow, and that's the notices that get sent out. We do get reimbursed $5 per test from Aqua Backflow because we have to administer it on the back end when it comes to submitting that report. So we do get $5 per test. And typical testing, it varies, but typical testing for residential property is $120 per test. And obviously that depends on what type of backflow device the person has that can change. So we do have an issue with compliance. We're trying to increase our compliance. So we have been looking down different avenues. We found HydroCorp. They collaborate with a lot of different communities in our area, especially when it comes to cross-connection control. They do other things as well as like hydraulic modeling, mapping. But what they would do is partner with us in the same sense that Aqua Backflow currently does, except when it comes to the past due tests, that's where they would step in and help us ensure compliance with those existing account holders. And the way that we plan to phase this, and I'll dive into a little bit more detail, but we want to start with commercial properties and just getting current commercial property accounts up into compliance. And then we're going to look at residential properties, get those up into compliance that are existing, and then eventually phase into doing surveys and identifying properties that do not have backflow prevention devices but would need them. We understand that this may be a difficult process, so we do plan to go very slowly and constantly checking up on the progress and seeing how the community is feeling, how the information is being relayed, because right now there are some issues with how the communication is going out and ensuring that residents are aware of the requirements, aware that it's the village that's sending these communications out, and making sure we're being as transparent as possible when it comes to this whole process. So phase 1 program launch, so this is 0 to 3 months. And really this is all kind of on the back end. So we would finalize and execute our contract with HydroCorp outlining the responsibilities and procedures. So based on the feedback we get tonight, we plan to bring that contract to the March council meeting. And then we'll establish an internal team to coordinate with HydroCorp. And then we'll start notifying commercial and residential customers of the updated compliance program. So a lot of education. And the proposal that we would be bringing in March has an education component that's specific to building our website, building the interface for residents to start understanding what this requires, why it's so important, because it's really protecting the health for everybody for their water systems. And then setting up the billing and cost recovery process. We will have to update a resolution for our fees because we will be adding the cost of testing directly onto a water bill for someone who has failed to do their testing. So there's some responsibilities outlined, and the deliverables would be the signed contract, the customer communication package, so the letters that are going to be going out, emails that will be going out, updating our website, making sure we have a lot of educational material available, and then our internal reporting structure for how we're going to start seeing compliance on the back end. So then once we have the groundwork really set up, we will transition to commercial account compliance. And the time frame is 3 to 12 months. Based on the feedback we get, we'll obviously change that timeline. It'll either be shorter or longer. And just a reminder, commercial accounts are required to test every year. So we would get the full set of commercial accounts that we currently have registered, tested throughout this phase. And so HydroCorp would start the compliance tracking system for all devices, commercial and non-resident, or commercial and residential. Then they start identifying non-compliant commercial accounts. So those accounts that have exceeded that 2 weeks to 1 month mark after their past due notice. And then they're going to conduct direct testing for non-compliant commercial accounts. So that's HydroCorp working with a plumber, contracting with a local plumber to get the testing done, and then submitting that online, and then submitting that information for reimbursement. So the village would have to pay for the testing up front through HydroCorp, and then have the cost of that testing included on the water bills. So HydroCorp would be responsible for the testing, and then we would be responsible for oversight and billing. And through this proposal, HydroCorp would provide monthly compliance reports. We would have an updated compliance database, and then we would have to do billing records for cost recovery. For residential compliance, which we're looking at over a year window after we kind of go and see how the commercial side works through and fix any kinks or anything, We would start monitoring residential compliance through HydroCorp system, which we would already be doing, but now start looking at those accounts that aren't in compliance. And we'll already have a 1-year history on those that aren't in compliance, plus moving on forward from that, the ones that are continuing to not be in compliance. And then we would start tracking the impact of reallocation on residential compliance. So the funds that we are recovering from the commercial side, we can reallocate those funds to residential testing and support. So going back through now what we just did with compliance or the commercial side, going and doing that on the residential side. So identifying the accounts that are overdue, sending out a plumber, completing the testing, and then including those costs on the water bills. Currently, we have no financial way to require the testing. We do have the ability to shut off water. When it comes to the commercial side, it's a little bit of a difficult situation if they have a fire line, because you don't want to shut off a fire line to a building. So this would allow us to have those funds go on the water bills, and then similar to a previous agenda item, start collecting on those water bills, having past due notices on water bills, and then eventually shutting off water or putting a lien on the property. So deliverables for this would be quarterly residential compliance reports. Like I said, residential, you're not going to see them testing as often, so we wouldn't do the monthly reports for residential, it would just be quarterly. Documented reallocation of funds, and then updated compliance rate projections. And so at this point, at this phase in the process, we should see a pretty large spike in compliance as we're almost requiring compliance and putting compliance really in our responsibility, and helping to encourage the compliance and working with property owners to reach that compliance. And so then once we start seeing that increase in compliance, then we would start going into an ongoing evaluation and continuous improvement. I did not include the phase for surveying in here because it would be over a year out, and that would be something I think we would bring back to council on our way and approach that we would complete surveying. It's not part of the current proposal with HydroCorp, so it wouldn't be included in anything that you're seeing brought to council in March. But it is something that down the road we would like to do, because we do know that there are some properties that need to have backflow devices that currently don't have them. So that is something that we would plan on doing down the road, but is not part of this current phased approach for compliance. So our projected outcome is commercial compliance baseline of 80%. It's pretty good, and it compares with a lot of the municipalities that have already implemented this type of compliance approach, where they're partnering with someone who's directly conducting the testing. Instead of fully relying on the property owner who may not have the education or understanding to know that it even needs to be done. And then a residential compliance increase of 3 to 5% via that reallocation. And then hopefully a full cost recovery of program investment. Thank you, and I will take any questions.
Thank you, Allison. Council, open up for questions.
Just have one question. Great job going through that with us. A lot of the stuff I've written down for questions you answered, so thank you. On the backflow device for commercial, if it does fail the test, and maybe I missed it, but the test was what could be placed on a lien or charge, but if it fails a test and it needs a new backflow device or whatever repair may be, is that the same approach where that plumber makes the repair and then the lien goes to the commercial property?
I believe that's correct. I can double check, but I think that's correct, yes.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one question. I apologize if I missed it, but do we have any idea of, I guess I'll speak mostly to residential, the cost that would be added to the utility bill, roughly?
So it's about $120 per test, and then we would add a 10% administrative fee, because we're gonna have to be the ones making those phone calls, sending out the emails, and then manually entering on the water bill that cost.
So would that be spread out over 12 months, or that just one hit to 1 month?
Typically it's 1 month, one hit on 1 month. If we wanted to look at payment plans, payment options, that we can look at that. That was going to be my suggestion when we start doing surveys, is to look at payment plans, because the installation of a new device can be pretty costly. The only issue with spreading it out is your chances of recouping those costs go down, just because it's an amount that you're hoping that the property owner stays there for. If they move in the next year, you're losing that. But I think that I mean, it's a possibility we could definitely look at, especially for residential. I think commercial, it'll be a little bit easier and it won't be as much of an ask, but I think for residential, we could look at doing that. That's
And
what you would
does
like.
it have to be, and again, I apologize if I missed this, I was reading over it again, but does it have to be a specific backflow preventer for the test to be able to run? Like if I have a ABC backflow preventer or HydroCorp, would it still, the test still work?
So there's different types of backflow prevention devices, but they're all like certified under law. Like they're not gonna put one in that won't work. And HydroCorp's gonna contract with just a local plumber. The local plumbers, they'll know how to do all of the ones that are installed in this area.
Okay. I'm just wondering, because I know I have one, I haven't tested it, that's for sure, but I'm hoping it's working. Okay, cool. That's all I got.
Just like last time, my biggest concern is going to be when we get to the point for residents in the older homes. Because I have a feeling they either don't have one or they have one that's going to fail a test. So I'm hoping we're going to be just very mindful how we approach that because it is going to be very costly if they have to replace it. And again, we aren't there yet to figure out what the cost would be in our economy at the time and with the plumbers. So I'm just hoping when we get to that point that we really do work with residents on how to make that feasible. Because that's my fear is many of our older homes are not going to have one.
Yeah. And I think even if we start this project, kick it off with commercial properties, we can come back in 6 months and just see how it's going with commercial properties and decide if we want to continue to move forward. I think that this is a very important thing for us to protect our water system, but I do understand how sensitive it can be for a lot of people, so I agree.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's important. I just think because it's new, and you have control over the timing you want to do it. So when we get to that point, that's really the biggest part for me is just how do we approach our residents who've been here a long time in those houses. That's it.
And I guess I'm still confused on the purpose of this. This is for every residential connection, it's for the water.
So it goes on your potable water supply. So it's after your meter. So the water goes through your meter, and then it would go through this backflow prevention device. And that's because nothing stops the water from going backwards. It's not on every residential property. It's only if you have those like high risk situations where you have maybe a reclaimed water that is directly tied in. You have the option to either do potable water or your reclaimed water going into your property, and there's a direct plumbing connection. If a valve accidentally gets left open and that reclaimed water can go back into the water main. So it's situations like that where typically through the building department, when you're building a house, they will decide when it's required and they'll make them install it when new houses are built. But then when you have older homes where you have a pool that was installed and it's directly plumbed into your system or something like that, it may not have been identified for you to install one. And so it's those types of homes. It wouldn't just be a typical residential property that doesn't have any of those high risk situations going on.
And it's not, is it tied to any type of irrigation system as well? If you've got a well to irrigate your lawn, is that where the backflow is for that, or this is?
So it's just on your potable water system.
Potable water.
But if you have a private well on your property that has plumbing that's connected to your house somehow, then yes, it would count.
Okay.
Now, if you can sit there, and this is where I don't know how they would do the surveys. We can go into that down the road, but they'd have to find out whether the plumbing is connected or not. So it's really site specific. If you have a private well and it's completely separate plumbing, there's no way that the plumbing could be connected, then you don't need one.
Okay, thank you.
So how do we, it doesn't sound like we do, but I just want to ask, do we know how many commercial properties are not in compliance, and do we know how many residential properties are not in compliance?
It's a graph. It changes, like it fluctuates pretty frequently just because the rate everybody's on it. It's not like everybody on January 1st has to do testing. It's all over the place. So it's changing all the time because it's whenever somebody built the house or got theirs tested, that new compliance date starts once they had it tested before. So if you can see, the non-compliant are the orange bars. So domestic for residential properties, it's almost 50% that are non-compliant, and that's existing accounts. That's not doing a survey and seeing properties that are not in compliance because they don't have a device. That's somebody who has a device and just isn't testing it. And then you can see there's some fire lines, specifically irrigation lines, and then miscellaneous.
So for residential too, we know the homes are not in compliance.
Yes, for those.
But
Yes, for the
only,
accounts.
That's only if they have a backflow device.
Correct.
I guess maybe I should have, let me re-ask this for the answer I'm trying to receive is if they don't have a backflow but need one, do we know that? That's what I was looking for. On both commercial and residential?
Most commercial, it's not as much of a concern. It's mostly residential. Most
Residential.
commercial properties have a backflow
We have no
device.
clue.
For
how
the
many.
residential side.
Okay. And what are we doing now that's not working? I mean, we send notices, I'm assuming, do we,
There's
phone
no-
calls, like how do we approach it?
So we send the 2 notices, we do phone calls, and we do emails. So Tracy at the front desk will call them and say, hey, but most of the time they don't answer, or they don't get back to us if we leave them a voicemail. And then there's no way to enforce it. They could just not do it. The issue arises that when somebody is in non-compliance and they're not testing their backflow, so if we know that that's going on, we're supposed to go and shut the water off. We have that ability. Is it enforced 100% of the time? I think it's on a situational type of basis. We try to continue sending the notices and get the communication out there, but there's no way to enforce it without shutting water off. So I think especially on the commercial side, there's a lot of hesitation with that because of the fire lines and just shutting off
course,
the
yeah.
safety.
How many backflow contamination issues have we had, say, in like the past 5 years?
Actual contamination issues, I'd have to go and look. We don't, the issue with backflow is also you just don't know necessarily when there is actual backflow going on. Because it's a residential property, we have no way of knowing when water went backwards through the meter. We could get a negative read possibly, but it's just not a typical occurrence for us to know if there has been a backflow incident. The other thing that helps is that our meters have a type of backflow device installed inside of them, but there's no way to test them, so they don't meet the requirements for Florida Administrative Code, but it is another layer of protection for us.
And those are both on commercial and residential meters? Yes. Both of them? Okay. Can you elaborate on, you said full cost recovery from the commercial program, then you said hopefully full cost recovery.
The residential.
So can you elaborate that? Like what's the cost of the program? How are we paying for it? Can you explain a little bit more how we're gonna fully recover those funds? I'm assuming we're gonna have to
We'll
foot the bill up front.
Yes.
Okay, so can you elaborate that and what the dollar amount we're actually looking at here?
So the proposal will be brought in March, and don't quote me on the number because I haven't looked at it recently, but I want to say it's between $50,000 and $60,000, and that's for 1 year, the very first year that we're using HydroCorp. So that would be all of the educational material, them coordinating the tracking of all of the compliance, and then that does not count the funding for testing. So we would have to budget a certain amount of funds for the upfront cost of testing, and then hopefully, especially on the commercial side, I think we're more likely to have the testing done and then include that cost on the water bill and it just get paid. I don't think we'll get as much pushback on that just because they're commercial properties. And so then once we recover those costs plus the 10% administrative fee, as we slowly build that back, eventually it we should gain money over time and then be able to use some of that funding the next following year to start getting residential properties in line. And we do have the option, so typically once one customer or a commercial property starts on this program of testing, they'll stay on the program of testing, but we will give the option for them to complete their own testing if they want to use someone else after that.
Okay. And out the gate though, we're going to give everyone the opportunity to come in compliant
Correct.
before.
Yes. So we'll continue with our typical notices and timeframes, but then once a commercial property goes out of that compliance window of the past due notice after, I think it's 14 days after it's due, we give the phone call, we do the email, we do the phone call, and then if we don't receive a response, that's when HydroCorp would be sending somebody out there to do the testing.
Okay, and then that would get tacked on to their water bill. So you said there's the option to do their own if they don't want to pay for it through us, but then would we maybe end up in the same situation where we're at, or would we give them like X amount of days and then we're automatically going to do it if they opt out and say they want to do it on their own?
So there wouldn't even be an opt-out typically. So they're responsible for it up until it's past due by 14 days.
14
And then we'll
days,
try to contact them. If we can't make contact, that's when HydroCorp will send a plumber out there to do the testing. So that at that point, we've assumed that they're already stating that they will not do the testing because we've sent the notices. We tried to call them. We'll do the testing, include it on their water bill, and then we'll continue to do the same notices next year. But if they don't do it again, we're sending somebody out there again next year for commercial properties. Residential is every 2 years.
Okay. Do you know how many water utilities in our area use this service?
I can double check and get back to you on that.
Okay. And then how many other companies did we look into?
I don't know how many we had looked into it. I can find out and get back to you on that.
Okay.
This is a very well-known company from what was the information that was provided.
Okay. Thank you. Council, any other comments or questions?
No, thank you.
Is there any public comment?
Marcia? I'm going to pass because I'll talk to Allison. I'm totally confused.
Okay. Any other?
No.
No? Any other public comment? Okay.
I wasn't planned, but I just.
Okay, if you can come up to the podium.
Talk to the microphone.
Yep, you can come up to the microphone. State your name and address, please.
Oh, well, this is about commercial. It's not about residential.
That's
But I live at 72 Yacht Club Place, Kimberly-Windish, and I just wanted to tell you that I do have an office up on US 1 in the West Marine
Kimberly,
Plaza.
can you address council, please?
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry. I have my office up in the plaza where West Marine is, and I get a notice in my mail slot to the previous owners of that plaza, which is 2 years ago sold, to Stillwater Russell Properties for the backflow. I've called the water department, and Steve told me as the tenant, I don't pay for it, the owner does. But you may want to check because they're not getting the bills. They're still, and I've noticed, like just with selling real estate, when I go to look up permits and stuff on you guys' building department, names and ownership doesn't change. It's kind of funky. I don't know how that works, but you may look into that plaza and see if you're sending the bill to the right person for the backflows. Because other tenants have gotten it and think they have to pay the $100. Steve told me I do not have to pay it as the tenant. I don't know if they addressed it, but it still keeps coming to Russell Properties and they don't own it.
Okay.
So just a little FYI.
No, thank you for letting us know.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Allison, how do we address that if there's like a change in ownership and maybe there's some confusion? I mean, do we try to assist with that, or is that a private property matter? How do you?
No, we would try to assist with it. I'd have to look up in a specific case-by-case situation. Sometimes it's difficult because the owner of the property is the one who is responsible for the testing. Sometimes they decide to pass that testing cost on to the tenant. In the case where you have a plaza that has multiple tenants, it's probably getting sent to each tenant because each one has a backflow instead of sending all of them to one owner. But we'd have to look on a case-by-case basis, but we can look into it.
Okay, yeah, if you could look into that property.
And I think if we did do this transition, it would actually make it better because it would be going on the water bills directly. And so all of that would kind of, right now the systems are kind of separate, but they would be a little bit more intertwined.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, council, any other discussion?
No.
All right, thank you, Allison.
Thank you, Allison.
All right, now moving back to agenda item 1, Tequesta Park Master Plan update from Kimley-Horn. Greg?
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. Greg Corbett, Parks and Recreation Director. Tonight, we have Jonathan from Kimley-Horn to give us an update on the Tequesta Park Master Plan. If anybody has any questions throughout the presentation, I'm here to answer them if you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Jonathan Haig, Senior Landscape Architect with Kimley-Horn and Project Manager for this fun project for Tequesta Park. This is our update. We've been into some concept design and felt it was a good stopping point to update council on where we are today. So as a reminder, this is the master plan that was approved in 2022 by NC Consultants. There's been some little tweaks and updates made to it since then, and we just want to review those with you today. So this is the current site plan that we're looking at. It's a kind of a conceptual development stage. You can see that for the most part, we stayed with the same general layout, what was in the original master plan, but we've made some tweaks. Some of it had to do with kind of the spatial relationship between some of the elements. Some of it had to do with requirements for those particular athletic features. And I'll review those here piece by piece, if this thing. Is that good?
Try the next slide, see what happens. Oh, one more. There's a couple.
Well, I mean, I can talk off of this slide if we need to. For some reason, the other slides didn't show up very well.
Do that slide or this slide?
I'll go to
The agenda actually
Yeah, they were-
shows them
the
all.
agenda
Can you
were-
pull up our agenda?
All right.
We'll start there.
There we go. So just to highlight a few of the changes, one that we made was addressing the parking. The original master plan didn't really address parking at all. It was relying on the original parking lot to serve the entire park. With all the new added improvements and to better serve the park in general, and to meet Martin County code requirements, we really needed to add parking and nearly double it. So what we've done is we've added 111 new parking spaces. There's 118 remaining for a total of 229. This will better serve the uses, especially if you've got a lot of things going on there at once, which we hope this park is going to be really, really popular once it's done. But you can see where we've taken up over some of the space where some of those original elements were. So, for example, on the right-hand side, we've got a parking area where you currently have basketball courts. So we've relocated those, and then we've got the maintenance facility that's replacing where the current caretakers, residents, and those sheds are located. And I believe Doug has brought before you, wherever he went, Doug has brought before you the new maintenance building, which will be coming forward, or moving forward as we get into the project. You want to go to the next page? This thing didn't work. So the central core of this park is, I guess, what we're labeling the family fun zone. And it kind of combines a lot of elements, which is kind of neat. We were able to move the volleyball over there. We still have the large picnic pavilion. That picnic pavilion sized at about 40 by 80 feet. Think about one of the larger pavilions at Carlin Park in Jupiter. It'll seat about 100 people at once with picnic tables. We have a splash pad with a little more dry space around it than was in the original master plan for parents to sit and watch the kids. We've got some more shade there we're looking at doing a funbrella, which is one of those really large, like 20-foot diameter umbrellas, and some picnic tables where you can put some other umbrellas with it as well. Playground area will have some shade sails on it for shade. We've got it configured in this design with kind of a pod design where you could have a pod for smaller kids and the larger kid area, get that separation in there, which is really nice. Also in that space in the middle is a standalone restroom building, which will kind of serve most of the park. And then there'll be another restroom building and kind of a concession area with the baseball fields. And I'll get to that in a minute. I think that's about it. A couple of other small picnic pavilions around this area as well. The main athletic active recreation zone, we have a 300-foot and a 225-foot ball field with a concession building, and then off to the left of that you'll see the little rectangle piece. That'll be batting cages for the kids to practice. And meeting with JTAA, the sizes of these, one of the fields at least changed from the master plan from 200 to 225, so that was one of the needs, was a little bit larger field. The artificial turf multi-use field is sized for a full-size soccer field. It also includes a little more out-of-bounds area. We're tagging that right now as a artificial turf. So it'll be a nice year-round use facility. You'll never have to put it on rest. If it's, so you can schedule games, constantly back to back. We have moved reconfigured the dog park just slightly. It's staying its general location where it's at right now. And then you can see where we've moved the basketball courts just south of that. We've also got in the plan to do some improvements to the pickleball and tennis areas. There's some, some wear and tear on some of those facilities that needs to be addressed. We're going to do that in this stage as well. So we've kind of got this more technical site plan we're working on. We're gearing up towards, we know we're going to have to go through Martin County zoning and plan review eventually. The site is fully in Martin County. You can see where we've got the parking tabulated on this sheet. If you want to review that, I can. But next steps will be more like looking at the design of more detailed things like the design of the splash pad and the playground with some theming to those elements, and picking out the playground equipment, looking at how the site's going to be secure with infrastructure for security systems. Obviously, we haven't gotten into the landscape design or any of the irrigation or anything like that yet. Still a little early. So to kind of review where we are on the project schedule, we're looking at finalizing the site design. I think we've kind of gotten there a little bit with by the end of January. By February 2026, have our preliminary site plan, prepping for a pre-app with the county just to review and make sure we're on the right track. Looking at our environmental assessment this month as well. Going through February through April, looking at preparing the site plan package, for the county checklist, and doing our environmental assessment update and the AMP update as well. April through June, site plan review and going through responses to comments, and then getting into the 60 and 90% plans production with the idea of delivering the 90% plans to the village by December. Any questions?
Thank you, Jonathan. Council, open up discussion.
I have two questions. Thank you for the presentation. Very excited about the park. The first question, security-wise, is there anything in the plans for the wooded areas, the paths, or just security in general for the park upgrades?
I know that in talking with Doug and Greg and the team, that we do want to do security out there, so we will work with addressing that as we move forward. That can be done in a variety of ways. You can add cameras and license plate readers at the entrances. You can do cameras throughout the site, mounting them to light poles where we're adding area lights and sports lighting. Whether we do it through the trail around the perimeter, we haven't gotten to that point yet. But if that's something the council would like us to look at, we can certainly add it to our list.
Yeah, if you don't mind considering how that would work. I mean, I have young girls, they love to go off into the path and take off. And I've seen other municipalities do that out in the woods with different hunting cams, things of that nature, if there's an issue with getting the wires out there, whatever it may be.
Right.
That'd be great. And another question is artificial turf instead of sod. What's the thought process behind that for the multi-use field?
Like I mentioned, the decision to go from artificial turf to sod is one that would allow, if it's a popular facility, let's say you're running soccer games in leagues there a lot, this is only one field. So you wouldn't have to have any kind of rest or turnover that would need to be done to keep that sod in good shape. A little less maintenance on the requiring, obviously no fertilizer, no mowing. There are other trade-offs that are made there, but if you're going to have a very popular and highly used soccer field or multi-use field, it's a direction to go where you don't have to put your fields to rest for months on end or a month on end to recover from a lot of use.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I agree, the parking out there is a little, like, depending on where you're trying to go in the park, you can end up pretty far from where you're trying to get to.
Mm-hmm.
But I heard you say that the parking is also to meet Martin County code requirements. Is that
Yes.
something we'd have to do regardless? It's just a matter of where it would go in the park?
Yeah, right now the park is underparked by quite a bit, just based on, use requirements. For example, let's say you had youth soccer going on and you striped that for 2 sideways fields, and you had baseball games going on at the same time, family reunion going on in the big pavilion, and people are visiting the splash pad and the dog park. You'd have a hard time fitting everyone in the 111 or 120 spaces that are there right now.
Okay.
So that's why we're adding quite a bit more, is to take care of not only the required parking per code, but also there's some turnover that's going to happen. Like if you're scheduling back-to-back games on the baseball field, you're going to have some exchange period of time where people are arriving while people are still there. So you want to make sure you have the infrastructure in place to be able to handle that load of people.
Does anything? I know it looks like we're just kind of moving a few things around, but would there be any required additional clearing?
No, we're looking at. In fact, if you want to pull up that main drawing, one of the main drawings of our newer plan, you'll see that we kind of kept the same outline of the existing cleared area. There is an area right near the maintenance building where there's a lot of exotic invasive plants that we can take out. There's several. I noticed carrot wood there. There's some earleaf acacia. There are several mango trees in that area that I know are beloved by some people, but they aren't the best thing to keep in a park, especially if they're not being regularly harvested.
Yeah, and then just on the not the sod, the turf. What would you expect? I mean, this could be a field that is used quite a bit. What would the typical lifespan of a turf multi-use field like that be?
It depends on the product and how much it ultimately ends up being used. And there's different things you can do with it, but I'd say depending on the product, between 10 to 20 years.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I got.
So I see we have the majority of the same facility usages in there for activities.
Yes.
I see batting cages were added. I'd like to know why. And I'd like to know what is the plan for that, because I go back to when we originally did the master plan, there was feedback on how to manage it because the one batting cage that's in Jupiter, public can't use it already. So that makes us the only batting cage publicly used. So I'm just curious if there's a plan for that, where that came from, because I do remember it got brought up when we created the master plan. Second thing, I got feedback about clearing, and I've been looking at it and standing at the park. It's the 2 baseball fields that you guys moved, and you guys tweaked them this way. I disagree. I think it's going to require some clearing. So I'd rather see 1 baseball field than 2 and create a more effective batting cage if there was actually a need for it, because then we could manage it more productively and have 1 baseball field versus 2 and less clearing of the natural space.
Okay.
Question for staff, because this came up when we designed the master plan, it was something with the state, like we can't actually clear any more than we needed to. I mean, I feel like I don't want to lose what we're trying to do right now if we do end up clearing, and I don't want to get in a tizzy with the state. The parking also, I understand from the feedback I got regarding this agenda item that Martin County Code will require us to have more parking. Again, I go back to when we were designing this, there was parking on the west side of the park, and it was not favored and confusing because you had to drive through it. So with the parking lot now on the east side in the middle, have you guys looked at, is that excessive parking, or is that meeting exactly what Martin County Code would need?
We have not yet gone through Martin County Code.
So you wouldn't even know what the numbers would be?
but we've gone through the requirements that are in their code requirements, and we are just meeting them with what we've added.
Because it says on here 229 existing plus proposed spaces. That's a lot of spaces.
229 total parking spaces, yes.
That's a lot for what that use is going to be realistically. Because again, we have maybe 2 baseball games going on, maybe. And again, maybe we look at taking out one field, that's one game. And then the center field, unless you have 2 different practices going on, you're splitting the field in half. There's not 6, 7 teams coming in with parents and cars. So I don't agree with the parking. I'd rather look exactly what we would need to make it happen, to make the park actually happen, but I don't think we should be putting in excess over what we need. AstroTurf, I'm against it for multiple reasons, even having my own kids as athletes. I can get into that if you guys need it, but I'm just a straight no on that one. I'd rather just do sod and maintain it. That's it for now. I did try to go through each one and comparing one. So thank you for not removing what we did have. I go back to what was the need for adding batting cages? What's the plan for it? Because I can't see the size of it on here.
Right. We've got 4 bays in there for batting cages, basically.
Okay.
And it could be more. Obviously, you could see from the space there, that shape, that kind of rectangular cleared area that's in the lighter green, that's the outline of the existing cleared area that's out there today. And you can pull up an aerial and look at it.
It just gets confusing because we have ours, we have yours, we have a satellite.
Right. The one that was done by NZ Consultants was an inaccurate portrayal of what the cleared area looked like, or else they were proposing to backfill more plantings to cover that area.
Okay.
I don't know what their choice.
That's fine, and nothing on you guys.
Yeah.
I'm just putting out there that as little things get tweaked, I hate for us to be constantly given something that's very inconsistent, because now we're looking at 3 different things here, and I just want to make sure that, because also I do remember it got brought up from the state that we can't go in there and start clearing a bunch of areas.
And that's
so for all of us, just to make sure we're being careful about that.
Yeah, we didn't want to clear any more area, but you can see where there's a huge area that's underutilized.
Yeah, it's the backfield on the far north.
So by pushing that big 300-foot field up to the north and taking advantage of that space, it opened up a whole lot more room for you guys to do some more within the park. Okay. And that included right-sizing that multi-purpose field. The one on the previous master plan was really undersized, and you would not have been able to play a older kid or even adult soccer game on that size field.
Okay, well, thanks for explaining that. I appreciate that.
As far as the decision for the batting cages, it was something that I brought up, and I think when we met with JTAA, they liked the idea. I don't know how it's going to be managed. Maybe Greg could answer that. We haven't really discussed it yet.
And I don't even expect like an answer for that.
Right.
I'm just putting it out there. In the beginning of this whole thing, I am an advocate for batting cages, but it did get brought up when we were trying to squeeze all these different amenities in there, that the sizing we originally had, we were going to get something super tiny, and then how do you regulate people? Do they have a timing? Because then you're going to have people fighting, it's my turn, and it just became a nightmare. So I think that's originally why it got removed.
Right.
But if it's something that is able to fit in there and it makes sense, like I'd rather not half-ass it. I'd rather make sure it makes sense, because we would be the only ones that people could actually show up and use them.
And it's got room for expansion. If it's popular, you could add more bays to it.
That's fine, but again, on here, it's not really super detailed for me, so that's why I wanted to ask. That's pretty much it for now, and I'll listen.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. And this is well before my time, so I'm asking a question that I do not know the answer to. Talk about the master plan that was done for Tequesta Park, and the comments that were made, I'm assuming we had charrettes that was memorialized somewhere. Are we addressing and meeting the needs or the comments that were, because I haven't seen those, or if I have, I don't recall them. Are we meeting the needs of what people expressed they wanted to see if we were to redevelop Tequesta Park?
Yeah, we haven't changed any of the program of this park. Okay. All the elements that were there before were there. We just added, again, parking. There was the original master plan called for, at the time, they wanted to keep the caretaker's house and some of the sheds that were there. Since then, the direction has changed for a new facility. And then the addition of the batting cage is really the only big difference.
Okay. I understand the need, and I support the batting cages, and I support the two different size fields, only because you cater to two different age groups. You
Right.
got under 12 and then 13 to 17.
Right.
And I think the batting cages in any municipality that runs a program, and I would imagine that we would be more engaged with JTAA or start Tequesta baseball or something. The scheduling is done really through the league at that point, and public has access, when no one's there. But, an hour before the game time, it becomes the property of the fields and things like that. So I understand that. The parking, I do understand, especially if you're going to have 4 teams there. And if it's a doubleheader on a Saturday, you've got 4 more teams coming. So there will be some overlap in the parking. So I'd hate to see us pave grass now or where it hasn't been paved. But I do know that we don't want to have a park that is unfunctional.
Right.
So, whatever we can do to fit the minimum, whatever the Martin County would require, I'd hate to see us go too far above and beyond that. But at the same time, you don't want to handcuff any type of logistics for the park at all. I too do not. I understand the value and the benefit of artificial turf on the multi-use field, but I just find it, and it's maybe the wrong word, but it's the only one that comes to mind, quite disingenuous for the effort that was put to stop development of golf courses, which are natural grass in Jonathan Dickinson State Park. And here we are trying to get this donated to us from the state of Florida to put artificial turf there. I understand the benefits of it. I just think that we're asking for something on one hand and we're not doing consistent on the other. So I don't support the artificial turf for that. I just think it's a slap in the face of anything that's ever been done to try to maintain the integrity of Jonathan Dickinson. So I don't support that, but I think overall, I think we're in the right direction, and I look forward to seeing this thing if it gets cleaned up.
Sure.
In regards to the new plan and the scale of it, so I personally know from experience, conceptual isn't always precisely to scale, and when you actually start laying things out and designing it, things can adjust. So I understand that. I do just, and I think you guys have done that. You're being very respectful and staying within the bounds of the original concept, but I do know sometimes things have to adjust when you start actually designing it. For the parking, I mean, you have to meet code, right? Period, end of story. So I'm fine with that. If through the design or through staff thinks that we need more parking, I need something to back that up, like a parking study, something to prove it, because I don't think, I'm not the expert, so I'm not gonna say no, but if you're asking for more parking than code, I need data proving it. I saw there was a note for fitness stations around the trail. I don't remember talking about those in the shred. Maybe we did. I'm not a fan. They get rusty. They're not used. It's more maintenance. I don't like them. I don't know if that hasn't been brought up. I don't know what council's opinion is on those.
I don't know the cost of them, but I would agree with you on the lack of use. But maybe the researchers, consultants know better on the use. They look like they would be a high cost, so I'd probably rather have that somewhere else.
I think they were part of the original master plan. We left that in there. A lot of people are going to a different configuration nowadays where they're combining everything into like one little like outdoor gym space where people can do like a circuit workout in one spot instead of around a trail. So there's kind of 2 different schools of thought. You could do the one where you've got everything spaced out and people stop while they're walking and do pull-ups or push-ups or sit-ups or whatever they would like. But you can tackle it two or three different ways. But
I've seen them at so many parks and they're rusty. No one's on them. So I'm not in favor of those. Especially I'd rather save the money because you could tell from this plan already costs have increased from the original concept, right? The addition of the batting cages, which I support those. So I think, something that maybe doesn't have a high potential to get used, we should not include on this. I know you haven't done landscaping yet on the maintenance shed. I know at the council meeting that we approved that, we landed on like a beige and color with blue trim and roof. It's really, really exposed. I don't know if there's any landscaping we can do around it to kind of hide it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I mean, pretty much everything is going to be facing that maintenance building,
Right.
so it'd be nice to hide it. The dog park location, what's the thought putting it in between the multi-use field and the basketball courts? I almost feel like you should flop the dog park and the basketball courts because
We can.
I don't think it's in the same spot as the existing. That's completely new, right?
It's generally in that same spot, and I think there's some shade trees in there that we might be able to try and keep in place. But we can look at flip-flopping it if you'd like to see that.
Yeah, I feel like it'd be nice to kind of have the dog area off on its own a little bit and not smack between two fields that are gonna be loud and used that maybe could disturb dogs. I'm a huge dog lover. Not everyone is, right? So people might not, want to be around dogs either. So I don't know. I think maybe just flipping them and having a little more separation from those coming for more of the active rec would be good. And yeah, the size of the fields and the batting cages, I do support them. I mean, we don't want to invest a bunch of money in what hopefully will be the future construction of this project and have it underutilized, right? So I think we want them to be used. We want them to accommodate the different parties, like, age groups with youth and adult. And again, with the batting cages, I don't think that's a bad thing to add. And I trust that staff will figure out a policy to manage that. I think we have 2 more comments. Oh, the trails. I haven't walked those trails in a while. Last time I did, they were sand. Are they sand still or are they gravel?
I believe they're still sand, right? Yeah.
So I think on the Kimley-Horn, it says that they're existing gravel.
Oh, did we might have mislabeled that. We can make them either gravel or whatever surface we need to.
I would like them gravel. I don't know if anyone else likes that. I've walked them a couple times. It's been a while since I've done the loop, but I know it's more maintenance for one of the 2 people sitting in this room to do gravel, but I think it really lends for a nicer trail, kind of like what we just did at Remembrance Park.
Right.
Yeah. And then when it comes to picking, the themes, the playground equipment, all that stuff, when are you guys plan on bringing that to council? And are you going to bring us like maybe 2 options to choose from? Because again, we're like, our community is so invested in this project. We're all up here very invested in this project. So it'd be nice to at least maybe have like 2 options to choose from. So we're part of that decision-making process to make sure it really is that vision that we all are looking for. So I don't know if you were planning on doing that and what stage or month that you would bring that to us.
We could probably be ready to bring something by either later this month or next month at least. We're pretty close.
Okay, council, do you agree? Do you want to see some options there and be part of that selection process?
Yes. Can I add one little thing to
Absolutely.
that? Not try to add to the project and budget.
Yes.
If it is possible, I'm assuming we'll be watering this monstrosity to some degree. Having a water spigot near any playground and do it like the schools where you need the key. But this allows our staff to quickly bring one of those flexible hoses and spray a playground down for sanitation more often. That's it.
Now going back to the playground and the splash pad, is there any themes you'd like to suggest, like a water theme, a beach theme?
No theme.
Pirates?
I say no
Oh, I don't want a theme, but I'm maybe color scheme, I should have said. Sorry. Again, let me rephrase that.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe color. I think we want it to be tasteful and aesthetically pleasing.
Okay.
Like
And then,
Constitution.
yeah, I mean, right, that's really,
It blends in.
exactly. And I am against artificial turf field. Are there any artificial turf fields in this area? I can't think of any.
I'm not sure if
No, but-
JCP has any.
I mean, at the
Well,
high school.
Jupiter has plans to do
Yeah.
so.
I mean, the high school field itself,
Which one? Jupiter High?
Yeah.
it's artificial.
What if,
I can talk about, the artificial turf is not on him, it was on me. So I take the blame for the artificial turf because I'm just thinking long-term maintenance and overall use based on the history of the fields that are being used out there and other places. They will have to be shut down. They will have to be fertilized. They will have have to be watered. So it all goes with regular turf. But my thought was, if we get to this point of doing this park, you're going to start to see probably more and more artificial turf on municipalities using it. The town of Jupiter, I'm not sure on them, but back more than a few years ago, that Jupiter High School converted their field over to artificial turf just based on the reasons that we're talking about right now. But one outweighs the other. At the end of the day, it's cost-wise, one's going to pay off the other eventually. So, but I'm just thinking of, not telling a user group, I'm sorry, the field's closed down for 2 months. And it happens all the time at the town of Jupiter. They close their fields down and then they come to Tequesta looking for field use. So we can barter with Jupiter somehow with the closing of fields. But I was just thinking long-term, with the artificial turf. I can go either way, but I'm just, wanted you guys to hear from Jonathan and see it. And, when we get to that point where we make that decision, we can, we'll probably have a little bit more research and numbers for you so that it'll kind of help you, make your decision.
Awesome.
Yeah, that'd be great.
On the batting cage too, us three, including Jeremy, we met with, we had a conversation with JTAA, and we said, hey, if we do any improvements to this park, what would you like to see? Because they're kind of like the predominantly users of that baseball field, and they had, along with Jonathan, agreed with the batting cage. Yeah, I agree with the dog park switch. Yeah, it would be much better. On the parking thing, just from like in the past 2 years since we've added the pickleball, so you'll have 50 people playing pickleball. There's 50 spots right there. And then if lacrosse is out there on a Saturday morning, they're bringing in 100 kids. Or if they're on their Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday time frames, they're bringing anywhere from 50 to 100 kids for one group. So, and we're adding a lot of really nice things to this park. He put together some designs for the water feature and the playground. Did they? Well, we got to look at them, and I think you guys will be really happy with them. Yeah. So, if you want to see a different couple versions, they're coastal vibe type water feature, and I think the playground is more like a fort or something like that. So, and the company that he's using to give you guys samples, Berliner, is like very, very good. So.
Okay, well, maybe we could have those on our next workshop agenda, maybe a quick item to just look at those.
Yeah.
We'll probably bring this back in March for approval since we don't have a consensus with this. There's, we got turf, parking, fitness stations, dog, basketball courts, gravel trail, playground. We'll make some changes to that and we'll have to get council approval. So we'll bring this back in March. And then we'll also bring those designs back in that process in March for them to look at. So one of the reasons why we did it this way is because we didn't want to pay our consultant a whole bunch of money to start doing designs and then we didn't like it or we didn't have a consensus and then we have to pay him additional money to change the plan. So this is the right process. We'll bring it in March, and so that way when they are drawing these things up, it's what council has approved.
Okay, still to take public comments, there might be potentially some changes based on public comment. Any other council discussion?
No, thank you.
Can I ask one more thing?
Yes.
Our playgrounds, a lot of them today are going to an artificial turf as a place safety surface. And I know that's something that we're looking at here. Is that something that an artificial turf application that we like, or for the safety service for the playgrounds?
I'm not super against it for the playground. I mean, it's mulch at Constitution Park, and I know, my daughter's school, it's mulch, and then she, it doesn't seem to bother her. I know she comes home with a ton of mulch in her shoes every day that I have to clean,
Right.
but I mean, I know sometimes rubber is used an option, but I think that would be my last choice. I don't know. What do you?
I don't have a problem with it at all. I mean, I think it's safe. I think you can pad it so the kids, just artificial turf. I know it is a little controversial. I will say I can't speak to parks, but in my other job, we do a lot of schools, both high school, college. They're all going artificial for that it's the use. I mean, they just get so overused, and I get it. There are totally positives and negatives to it, but I agree. I mean, it seems to be the way to go if you want to have year-round use of a field.
And as a safety surface, you would have the turf layer is just the covering over like a series of like foam layers that take care of the fall height off of these. So when a kid falls, it's made to address the height of the equipment next to it. So you might have thicker pieces of foam around some equipment and thinner pieces at other places. But it's meant that if they fall down head first, they're not going to have a serious injury for them.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes mulch can be hard to maintain at the right depths and levels to keep that system compliant with the fall height requirements.
Yeah, and kids love to play with mulch.
I know, it's the best part.
Well, yes, I agree. But they also throw it at each other, and it ends up on the slide. Like, we'll go to Constitution, there'll be like a pile of mulch on the
So
slide.
it's a lot of pros and cons for me.
Yeah.
Playground, I see a lot of the benefits, for some spots, to be an AstroTurf. I'm not a fan of AstroTurf. I'm in the sport world. It's not safer. There's way more injuries. That's why for the general field, that's a big no for me. Playground, possibly. Again, it depends on how much are we really going to go into it, because there is different padding. So for me, it would have to come down to what's underneath it. The rubber is a big no for me. It's disgusting. It's hot. And staff is not going to be out there sanitizing it and cleaning it. And it does get sticky. Again, I'm a Florida girl. I grew up with pine needles and mulch and dirt and sand.
I grew up in Oklahoma with dirt and sand and rocks, and
I'm not
that's not allowed these days.
I have very playful children.
Yep.
I've had splinters. I get it. You can fall. No matter what a kid falls on, they're gonna hit something. So if we're gonna talk about in the future playground having turf, for me it's gonna come down to what's underneath it.
Yeah.
And how is staff gonna be cleaning it?
You're right. There are national safety requirements for playgrounds that everyone needs to meet. Whenever we would specify a turf system, it would be a system made for playgrounds that would have the correct depths and amount of foam underneath it.
I love that you understand it, because that's what it's going to come down to if we talked about playgrounds.
Yeah.
I'm good with turf on playgrounds.
Cool. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any comment cards?
Marisa Perry.
My name is Marisa Perry. I live in the country club. My comments tonight have a theme, and it's why is the village bringing forward proposals that are contrary to the clearly stated wishes of residents? In the case of Tequesta Park, the proposal is a layout that ignores essential pieces of the plan that was created from the public charrette and subsequent meetings. 2 items in particular are totally unacceptable and should be rejected: the doubling of the parking spaces and the failure to reduce the non-natural footprint of the park. First, the plan ignores the charrette's critical decision on parking. I was at the charrette and everyone agreed that the existing parking should not be expanded under any circumstances. This is very important, and you need to honor the wishes of residents because they were very clear on this point. There was no mention that the existing parking would be outside of the code, which was a major oversight in the charrette moderation. If residents had known that all of these amenities, most of which we have now, would require doubling the parking, they undoubtedly would have said to reduce the amenities. And I agree, the place to start, I think, is the 2 baseball fields down to 1. Given how the charrette was conducted and out of concern for the increased costs the new parking will undoubtedly impose on this project, the answer here is obvious: reduce the amenities in the park until the existing parking is sufficient. There really is no good reason to spend taxpayer dollars on parking lots when no one wanted that and expressly wanted the opposite. I guess one option too is to ask Martin County for a variance here. The second, the proposal does not follow the charrette's footprint for the district area. This was a key part of the plan and it has been totally ignored. This park is supposed to be for nature-based resource recreation. and that's according to our lease. Accordingly, it was a desire of residents at the charrette and the multiple meetings that followed, and in the final design from that long and expensive process, that the footprint of the developed area be reduced, not the original footprint be maintained. There were additional reasons for this, including that the natural area is much less expensive to maintain than the developed rec facilities, and the fact that this park has one of our water wells in it, and residents wanted more natural buffer around that well. The proposed design has totally disregarded this clearly expressed wish of residents and instead uses every square inch of the existing footprint for things residents did not ask for. This is also unacceptable. Like many residents, I'm sure, I'm very glad that we have an opportunity to have Tequesta Park beautifully renovated. I think it's long overdue, and I'm looking forward to it. I've personally invested a lot of time into the process to make this possible and reasonable. But having seen how the plans for this park have been co-opted over the years, first by a former council member who wanted to turn it into a huge sports complex, and now in part by this plan, I ask that you honor residents' clearly expressed wishes. That means the plan needs to conform to the essential elements of the charrette, both of which I think will also help reduce the costs for taxpayers. And I do want to say I have no objection to fake grass underneath the playground necessarily, but you definitely don't want it under swings, and you can look at Constitution Park to see what happens with fake grass under swings.
Yes, thank you, Marie.
Thank you, Marie.
Nope, any other public comment? All right, thank you, Greg and Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Moving on to our final agenda item 3, discussion of unified right-of-way, swale, and driveway standards. Doug.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Tonight, I'm bringing back this item for conversation and recommendations. We took this back among staff, and we took some suggestions that we received. And our goal was to make sure that our core concept was not compromised. And the core goal here in recommendation is that we're protecting our right-of-way, the village right-of-way. We're protecting our underground infrastructure, we're protecting our roads, we're protecting our sidewalks, and we have a place for water to run off, right, into our swales. So we're protecting our drainage, which is also part of our MS4 permit, in that we're maintaining our swales. And there are certain requirements that we maintain our swales, that we hold back water, and in the same respect, that water can flow freely to our storm system. So tonight, we spent some time in conversation with Dylan as well, and we have a draft ordinance here. And the goal here, or the recommendation, is to unify multiple ordinances. In particular, it would repeal and replace Chapter 74-181, and then Chapter 66-347. It does allow landscaping in the right-of-way. Our recommendation is to allow some landscaping in the right-of-way by permit with clear rules to protect drainage, utilities, and visibility. Trees would be allowed at the top side of the swale, on the house side, and prohibited at the bottom of the swale, side slopes, and along the roadway. If you take a look at that first picture on the PowerPoint presentation, an example of where trees would be allowed would be on the resident side, on the high side of the swale. It allows, we're recommending specific grasses, wildflowers, and ground cover in the swales. They must be staggered, properly spaced, and kept out of the flow line to allow for drainage and flow. The ordinance does not allow artificial turf, invasive species, shrubs, and hedges in the swales. They are prohibited. The plant selection that we chose are all Florida friendly, native plants and trees. This is from our first presentation, so again, our goal is to align village code to protect infrastructure, safety, and aesthetics. Right? I gave you the two codes that we're looking to, the two chapters that we're looking to repeal and replace. And again, the goal is to protect stormwater drainage, infrastructure, and public safety. These are allowable plantings that we're recommending in the village right-of-way and swales. If you look at the top side of the swale, these are the trees that we're recommending. These are all Florida native trees. The grasses and wildflowers will be allowed in the swale, not in the flow line, but in the swale. They also allow wildflowers and perennials. And then ground cover would allow in the flow line, just these specific plants in the flow line. Again, these are allowable plants, just putting together some pictures that you can see the variety of different plantings in the right of way.
Can you go
Again, I
back
talked
one slide?
about, I'm sorry?
Can you go back one slide?
Yeah.
Sorry. So no oaks at the top of the, right? No oak trees on the top of the swale? They would have to be outside right away?
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
So again, one of the goals in this recommendation, right, is essential that we protect all the important services, right? The essential service that we provide to the residents. As you can see, there's a small footprint in the right-of-way to allow for these services. And when we're planting on top of these services, it's hard to maintain those. We have root systems that grow into the services. They break pipes. They cause damage to water mains. They cause damage to stormwater systems, Florida Power and Light, sanitary sewer systems, everything that you would find underground in the right-of-way. This was an example that I provided in the first workshop of an infrastructure project. And you all know this is on Tequesta Drive where we're replacing one 8-inch water main. And this is the impact to the right-of-way, just replacing one 8-inch water main. Which is why it's important that we're monitoring and we're inspecting and we're providing plantings that are accommodating to the infrastructure and for our drainage as well. So the next step would be to prepare this for our council meeting in March, adopt the new revised ordinances, and then from that point, launch an education program, handouts, websites, and answer any questions that the residents might have. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Doug. Council, for discussion.
I have a couple of questions for you, Doug. Great job on the presentation, keeping it simple and straightforward. The first, I think your opening statement makes sense, and we understood the intent of this language. I think we do got to add on there that we do that with balancing our neighborhood aesthetics, right? Because that's sort of up here on the council. You have your mission. I greatly understand that. And then we have ours, and we're balancing in between. So I want to make sure we continue with the neighborhood aesthetics. That does make Tequesta, a beautiful place. The first question I have is on the 12-foot tree. When I try to picture a resident, and I was able to have some beneficial conversations with residents that asked great questions, some things I didn't think about. But as a resident, if I want to do something in my swale, I think in the current form, I would just walk into the into building and say, hey, this is what I want to do, help me with this, right? Because this is kind of confusing. And that's okay if staff is ready to do that. I think to do that on our own, do that on my own and make sure I followed all the policy would be tough. And the first one I had a question on is this 12-foot tree. What's the meaning behind that, and can we alter that so as a resident, especially DIY, I'm not going to be able to handle the installation of a 12-foot tree, plus my costs are going to be greatly increased. And I'll set that just for the first question, if you could address why it has to be a 12-foot height minimum.
That's pretty standard depending on the tree species that you're selecting. Okay. You could pick a smaller caliber and a smaller tree. I mean, that's open for discussion. But as far as guidance, when any resident comes forward and wants to make modifications to their property, that goes to the building department, and then that is sent out to the public works department and the utilities department. And we are there step by step reviewing the permit documentations, any plans that they might have, any work that's going in the right of way, and we're out there meeting with the residents and guiding them along the way and giving them suggestions and making sure that they understand, a little piece of it is education. A lot of the residents, when you go out there, they believe they own the property right to the road. They don't realize there's a right of way. And that's something that sometimes we may think is very simple. Most of the residents I meet are unaware of where their property line ends and where the right of way is. So we go out there and we talk with the residents and explain these things. A lot of residents don't realize how many utilities are underground in that right of way and the purpose of that right of way. We don't put those utilities in the middle of the road other than possibly sometimes you have your sanitary sewer system in the middle of the road. So once you go out there and educate the customer or the resident, they understand what the purpose is and why we're there. So we walk them through the whole process. Putting this in place just unifies the code that we already have. And what we're doing is allowing or suggesting, recommending plantings that will accommodate, you think about the money that the village is investing in their infrastructure, right? You're replacing some water main that's almost 60 years old, right? And that's going to continue, right? There's a lot of aging infrastructure. There's a lot of boring and construction projects going around throughout the village. And you're investing a lot of money in that infrastructure. And it's important that you protect that. Just on sidewalk in the last 10 years I've been here, we spent $1 million replacing sidewalk throughout the village because of underground infrastructure.
Understood. Thank you.
It's an investment that's going to continue, right? So it's important to do your due diligence and protect that infrastructure, and protect your dollars, protect the taxpayers' dollars. I understand the aesthetics and the importance of that, the charm of the village. A lot of the residents that we talk to and come forward, they love the charm of the village, and we understand that. We're just making suggestions and recommendations to protect that infrastructure as well, protect your dollars.
Absolutely, and thank you, and I support that as well. If you ever driven through a neighborhood in like Coral Gables, you'll notice the swales, the right-of-ways, right? They put a lot of intention and love into that aesthetic, and I want to be able to support our residents that if they want to spend their own dollars on keeping that aesthetic or improving the area even, that we do give them a way to do that. And I think you spelled that out. Although it can be a little confusing, how do I apply this? I believe that is your intent to stay along with that a resident can beautify their area, especially when they're going to maintain it themselves and invest in it themselves. So I think going back to the tree, I would like to see the 12-foot tree minimum reduced to a much smaller, doable height. And I don't know if that's a 2-foot or a 4-foot. I'm not an expert there. In my head, I'm just trying to think, what would I do? I'd probably buy a 4-foot tree from a tree farm and go through the permitting process from there.
Okay.
I'll stop my questions there and just see where the conversation goes. Thank you again for putting a lot of work into this.
Just real quick to piggyback on that, would the size vary in the species though? So it wouldn't be like a flat minimum, but maybe depending on the species. Like the oak trees that we planted on Tequesta Drive, what size are they?
Those are 10 to 12.
Okay, so there's a good gauge, but maybe depending on the species. And was our landscape consultant, the landscape architect we used, was he consulted for this list?
No.
No, okay. So it might be good to have him opine on that, because he could probably do maybe, because there's several trees listed and each tree could be different size minimum depending on the tree.
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to keep it simple because right now it applies to all trees, 12 foot.
Piggybacking on trees, if someone did get approval to put a tree at the top of the swale, but it's still in the right of way, are we counting that or not counting that towards their tree code for the front yard?
That does not count, when it's in the
Extra.
right of way, it does not count for
Okay,
tree code on private property.
thank you for clarifying.
And if you're planting at the top side of the swale, obviously you're going to plant on the flat side of the swale, not on the incline.
I have more, but we were talking about trees. So
Yeah, so you were done, correct? So yeah, Councilmember Brennan,
Please,
go
thank
ahead.
I wanted to mention one other thing too. So some of the conversation and the feedback we got from the last meeting and in the meeting itself was that if this ordinance were going to pass, residents would have, we'd go out there and we'd tear apart residents' properties and you'd have to take everything out that's in the right of way. That is not the objective and the intention of this. So if you're a homeowner and you are going to do some work in the front of your house on your landscaping or you're changing your driveway, you have to meet the code. We're not going to every resident saying you don't meet the code, you're going to get a violation, you're going to get a notice to fix your landscaping. But if you come forward and you're taking out your landscaping and you want to plant in the front, now we have some guidelines for those residents. and to help them through that. That's our job, to help them through that.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm not a fan of this thing. I wasn't a fan of it last time it got brought to us. I appreciate the compromise of at least the permit process of working with each property individually and the swale, because not everyone's swale is the same either. We've talked about that, how some are wider, some are not. I totally disagree with the list of approval plans, only because when I first started with the EAC, when it was originated, we were given this book by University of Florida that literally is like this thick, and it's all Florida approved plants. So I have a concern with, we're gonna shrink this book down to maybe 10, and we're gonna look like an HOA everywhere. So I'd rather take away the list completely, and since there's already gonna be a permit process, which actually already exists already, so I'm a little confused again. If you have to have a permit no matter what to plant in the right of way, you have to come talk to staff and figure out what you wanna do. And it was just brought up here, and I think you even just said it, someone walks into building and says, here, this is what I wanna do, and then staff starts the process. So if someone comes in and they have a plant absolutely is not good for the right of way, whether it's in the swale or not, then staff would then say, you can't plant this because X, Y, Z, with actual facts and data. So for me, I'm fully against an approved list as long as staff is working in the process already. The process already exists with having to get a permit. There are things in the right of way. So for me, if this is such an issue, where has code enforcement been 30 years? So I understand we're moving forward. And for the record, I do fully support not planting things right on top of our piping, especially since we're spending like $80 million replacing it all. But again, I go back to, I don't want to overcomplicate this, and I don't want to shrink it down to 10 things, roughly. Don't quote me on that number. That's pretty much where I sit as a nutshell. Again, I'm going to sit and listen and see what else maybe gets clarified for me, because again, I think this is overcomplicating it and too much government involvement.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. No, I do get it. I mean, we have to protect. First off, when I and this is what I said last time. When I moved to Tequesta, it's possible I just never looked at it where I lived before, but I remember being surprised, how much of what I thought was my property wasn't really my property. But I remember coming to the village and just saying like, hey, what can I do here? What can I not do here? And it was pretty, at the end of the day, I knew whatever I put in that right away, there was always a chance that if Tequesta decided to put in a sidewalk or utilities, if they did utility improvements, that whatever I put in there was a risk it could come out, and that's just part of it. So I get it, and I also understand the importance of all the utilities that run through that right away. I know, again, controversial stuff. We've gotten a lot of emails from residents, and I certainly understand their position. But there's one thing that I've seen in a few emails that I just want to get on the record that I don't think is accurate. So if a resident if they're not doing any kind of improvement in the right of way, let's just say I'm not touching my property or anything in the right of way, would the village have the right to require that resident to remove any trees or anything? To remove any trees or anything as it currently stands?
No.
I didn't think so. Okay, so unless there was perhaps an issue with like the utilities or something running through there.
Right.
Okay, see, that seems to be the misinformation I keep hearing, is that the village is just going to come through and tell people they have to rip out, existing.
They're doing it.
Well.
They're doing it right now.
Sir, we'll take public comments, so we'll definitely call you up so you can comment at that time. Thank you.
So, yeah, I think that needs to be made clear, is that this isn't like a malicious act on the village of like, we're going to come in and clear out the right of way, and to me, that's not what this is, but I do think that needs to be made a little more clear.
Yeah, for instance, if somebody comes in and they're redoing their driveway.
Yeah.
And they're not touching their landscaping,
Mm-hmm.
tell them, well, you also have to put a swale, in your grass as well and absorb that cost. We recommend that, you're putting a new driveway in, whether it's pavers or concrete, and matter of fact, and tonight we also have asphalt driveway on here.
Yeah.
As a recommendation for for areas where they don't have any sidewalk or any planned
Yep.
sidewalk, so you don't have to put asphalt and then concrete, so asphalt all the way to the road.
Yeah.
But if somebody comes in and they're just replacing their driveway and they're not touching their landscaping, we don't make them build a swale. We recommend that you're now putting a swale in your driveway and the water's gonna pool and sit in your driveway unless you move it into the grass. So we make that recommendation to them, but it's not required that unless you're touching your landscaping, you don't now have to build a swale as well. That's an additional cost that they didn't think of, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't plan for.
Yeah, I think this is just one of those, changes in our village that are just going to, the residents just going to have to be, there's going to have to be a lot of education that goes out there, because I've heard everything from, you can't plant any trees, shrubs, or anything anywhere in there, and I've read it. I know that's not true, but there's just certain things that are, going out in the community that, just,
Well, there are folks that have recently planted
yeah,
in their right of way without permit,
Yeah.
and
That's
they've
different.
received notice from the from code enforcement that they've planted without a permit.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, I look at it, it's not really my property anyway, so I guess I might have a different perception. I perceive all of this differently. Like, who am I? If it was directly on my property, that's a different story, but this really isn't my property. So I agree, there are certain instances when you have to get a permit. That just is the way it goes. And if you don't, then, you might have to deal with some stuff.
and we understand that it's not the resident's property, right?
Yeah.
But we're also sensitive to know that they
Yeah.
maintain it, right? And
100%.
that's not unique to Tequesta. Every municipality requires that the homeowner, occupant, resident maintains the property to the road.
Yeah,
So of course, they're maintaining the curb appeal that's adjacent to their property.
Yeah.
So yes, they don't physically own it,
Mm-hmm.
but they maintain it and they take pride in that.
yeah,
So
which is
we
great.
understand.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, that's all I got. I just wanted to make that clear that the village isn't going to come through and just start ripping out people's trees and shrubs that have been there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That's just not what this is doing. So I just think it's a change, and with change, there's sometimes controversy. So we just need to, there needs to be a lot of education that goes out in our newsletters and otherwise. That's all.
It was very different in the past.
Yeah.
I think you've all touched on it, that folks just did whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Just, there were no permits, and plant out into the, right out into the street. Plant on top of sidewalks and infrastructure, and there were no standards, or if there were standards, they weren't being followed, right? So this is what this is about, is unifying the code, making it clear not only for staff, but for residents.
Yeah.
And having a standard that everybody can follow.
Yep. Thank you, Doug.
Yeah. Doug, thank you for your presentation and the hours and hours and hours of work that have gone into this. I appreciate and understand the need for what we're trying to do, because I don't like to see standing water for 2 or 3 days on the road. That has to do with a lot of things. There's like I think my front door and the crest of the street are eye level. And I think when they came in, they put sewer in North Dover. They never replaced the swale. You can tell where the cut goes across. So there's a lot of reasons why I think we're having this conversation. And so I understand the need for this. But when I read through the code, and I took the time to read everything, it seems like there's a lot of gray area here that I really would prefer that we clean up before it comes back. And I can not to go through everyone, and I'll give that information to Jeremy so that way you can kind of see it. But like, it starts with, the grandfather clause. We have a grandfather clause, 63-2A. It says that all plantings, they're going to be there. But then in the same paragraph, it says the village reserves the right to remove or require any existing vegetation if it's determined to obstruct. Although right above it, it says that we're not going to do that. That we're not going to touch people's if we're not doing it. So that's kind of where I'm going with that, and I don't.
And that would be a case where you had something happen in the right of way. Maybe you had a pipe break or whatever's going on in the right of way. That village staff has to go there, and they're digging in the right of way. Whatever was planted there is coming out. The intent would not be to put it back, right?
So, Vice Mayor, if you don't mind, I would like you to read out
Okay.
your, because, I mean, council might want to opine on them too, and that way I think, because already to me, like, I'm disappointed our landscape consultant hasn't reviewed this. I think he needs to. I thought he was. I don't know if our attorneys reviewed it or not yet. I think you've been involved, but again, this might be good for him to hear now too, and then if there's any clarity and we all agree that we can handle that now.
Because my concern, and I'll preface it with the bigger paintbrush, is that we allow flexibility, but I think in code, the code shouldn't be subject to interpretation about, oh, well, that's an odd shaped right of way. We'll define an odd shaped right of way. Because whose opinion is that? Because I might think, because when they put the sewer through North Dover, they destroyed my swale. And I can't do anything. So I think I've got an odd shaped right of way. But that's what I feel. And we're going to put the onus on one person or one department, and which could be in direct conflict with a homeowner just based on that word alone. Like, we're going to impose reasonable rules. I might think something is unreasonable. So these are examples, okay?
And I'll give you an example of that. So right now we're on East Wind Circle, and we're replacing sidewalk, damaged sidewalk. We're going to be taking out the concrete road and replacing with asphalt. We're trying to mitigate flooding in the area in the cul-de-sac. And the last two homes in the cul-de-sac at the end of East Wind Circle, the way it was built, and the way the right-of-way is, you have a sidewalk and then you have an approach apron to the street. And that approach apron doesn't give us enough room to build a swale there, right? So here we are, replacing the sidewalk, replacing aprons where we have to, but we can't follow the standard swale detail because we just don't have the footprint. And we're not going to go into private property and start constructing on private property. So that would be an exception that you would have to make based on conditions that you have out in the field. I'm not familiar with your property, but maybe the catch basin was in a spot where a swale couldn't be built, or I don't know what it is, but that would be based on what you see, specifically to that property. Is there underground or above ground infrastructure? Is there something impeding staff or the contractor from following details that are approved, where you have to make an exception?
Okay. It's just, I think that it's open to interpretation. What I think, I have an odd shaped right of way because I've got a manhole cover in my middle of my front yard. There's nothing I can really do because that's one example. Another way here, it's a violation for any individual to disturb, dig, construct, install within, or in any way modify the village-owned right-of-way. Explain modification. I think there's some words here that it doesn't go into detail, where if I'm reading this at home at night, it's not telling me what I can and cannot do. At least that's not the layperson that's as I read it. The village shall be responsible for maintaining any village-installed landscaping with the right-of-way to ensure continued compliance. Does that mean our existing tree canopies? Like on Country Club Drive, with all the beautiful, everybody comments when they come to League of Cities we host, they say, oh my gosh, the tree canopy, the canopy row is unbelievable. But aren't those tree canopies, aren't they oak trees?
Yeah.
And some of them don't. I mean, are they all outside? I mean, are they planted where we're not allowing other people to plant?
The village maintains those oak trees. Yes.
Okay. Why do we have to have staggered groupings? What does that mean? Staggered groupings versus a solid row? Does that mean we can't have a hedge?
In the flow line.
In the flow line.
So you allow them flow, you're not impeding flow in the flow line, right? So eventually it has to get to your storm system and to your catch basin, right? Through your swales. So by putting hedges, shrubs, planting in the flow line, you're impeding that flow, right? You're collecting debris, you're collecting garbage. It's a standard, across the United States that you don't impede the flow of your stormwater system. Eventually it has to get to your stormwater system, right? And by planting the correct ground cover, that will not impede your flow. So there's certain plants that we have allowed because they're flood tolerant in the flow line, right? You look at that list at the bottom there on the screen. But you don't want to plant hedges and trees in the flow line. It's going to impede your stormwater and your drainage flow.
Okay. But we can
which
plant.
eventually is going to cause flooding.
Okay. And again, a comment on the 12-foot minimum height, I would like to see that reduced a little bit. And a root barrier shall be a minimum of 18 inches deep and extend the full length of the infrastructure interface. Does that mean if I'm putting a tree on, per the code, on the acceptable upslope or the flat area, I'm putting one tree, I have to, the entire right-of-way has to have a root? What is that? What is the infrastructure interface?
That can be cleaned up.
Okay, yeah, but those are the things that I'm reading in those. This is one. In circumstances involving odd-shaped, extended, or otherwise unique right-of-way areas, the village may consider exceptions to requirements.
It could be a corner lot where you have more right-of-way, more space.
And this one last thing, the street intersections. So we have to have, you can't have any plantings. You have to have a minimum separation distance of 25 feet from the point of the intersection to wherever the first planting is. So a corner lot effectively can't have any type of.
That's standard. That's not something we've added to the code. That's been in the code.
All right. But so now it's in the code, but if something is currently planted within 25 feet of the corner, we're not going to, even though it's against FDOT, we're not going to go in and make somebody remove that. Because we've just said everything is grandfathered.
Unless you're redoing your landscaping.
Okay, unless it's a trigger event. Okay.
Right.
But that's some of the things. I kind of stopped after that because I think there's a lot of gray area still here that needs to be cleaned up for me to get behind this. Again, I understand the need for this and I support the need for that, but as it's with the language that's here, it's just a little bit too, gray for me at this point. I think it's putting you, staff, somebody, a department in the crosshairs of an argument with a homeowner who's going to interpret some of this language a lot differently. And so I just want to make sure that we're cleaning that up, that anybody could read this and it's black and white. And maybe that's not how code can be written. Maybe I'm naive to believe that, but I think that way it takes away all interpretation or subject to whatever the building the code officer goes out there and said, well, it's really not as bad as I think. Well, maybe it is. To he, it's not that bad, but to the neighbor that's right next to it, they might think it's terrible. So I just want to see it more detailed, just because I think it takes away any guesswork out of it, and it keeps everybody's powder dry. I mean, it's not putting anybody in there, because that's going to be the most hateful, that's going to be the worst job in the world for the person that's got to go out and tell somebody that, I think it's not really an odd-shaped lot. I just think that there's some language in here that I'd like to see us kind of make it sharpen the pencil a little bit more and get rid of any confusion, because I think we're going down a path of tremendous confusion with this. And I understand what we're trying to do, but I just think there's some things contradict in one part, seem to be contradict, because maybe there's not enough information. Like you just explained the one example to me, it doesn't say that.
Right.
But you know that.
Yeah.
So I just like to see a little bit, it's got to be cleaned up a little bit more for me to get behind it.
Yeah.
If you have any, and I'll be glad to talk with Jeremy or you if you want to give me a call. I don't mind, whatever's proper. Just some things that, as it stands right now, I can't get behind this because I think it's really gray and there's a lot of confusion. In trying to clean something up, we're creating confusion, and I don't want that to happen. So.
In an odd-shaped lot, typically you're going to have more right-of-way than another resident, and that's usually on a corner property. So you could have a right-of-way extending 20 feet, and there's no utilities in that area, so that would be an exception, right? There's no utilities. You have a huge right-of-way. Some folks only have 7 feet, 8 feet, 14 feet. It varies throughout the village. And then you have this tight little footprint where you have all this infrastructure there, underground, right? Above ground, underground. So you have to be, extremely aware of that, right? Somebody who has almost 15 feet of right-of-way, that's an odd-shaped lot.
And
There's no utilities.
And does the proposed code allow plantings in the swale area?
No.
For the plants that are low roots, they don't have any root system in them, or so there's absolutely no planting till you get to up to the owner side of the swale.
That's correct.
Even if it's just a plant that is a ground cover.
Right now, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
So, Thank you for your efforts on this to date. I think it's really important. As you know, a while back when a resident had reached out to me with a code violation, I identified, okay, well, I have to go here for this and here for that and this chapter for that. So this unified ordinance is very much needed. And I want to be clear because I went through all the different chapters and code we have in the state. This is more flexible than how our code is written now with what's allowed in the right-of-way. Am I correct in saying that or no? Because I think right now, like, you can't even put a tree in the right-of-way, and now we're saying, well, you can put it on the owner side of the swale. So I want to keep that in mind. This is actually less restrictive than how the code is written right now. And I think that's the intent. Like, we want to allow appropriate plantings in the right-of-way. We want to maintain the beautiful aesthetics that we have here. And I will say, utilities is huge to protect, and getting water off our roads, especially in a large flood event, is critical. That's a health and safety issue. I know we've repaved roads and have put in new infrastructure drainage, and the roads are still flooding because people don't have swales. So it's a really important effort, and I do think the long game approach is correct. But yeah, I do think there's a couple things that can be tightened up. I think in regards to what the Vice Mayor said, some things might have to remain flexible because there just might not be a way to clearly define it in the code. But I think between staff and the attorney that you guys can maybe fine tune some of those. Because, I mean, we went through this as part of the reason we did our, like the beach road guidelines and commercial corridor guidelines, because it was so subjective the way our code was written, right? So we wanted to have those guidelines for both parties to be able to use. In regards to the plantings, I disagree with what Councilmember Brandon said on no list, because again, that just opens up to more subjectivity, and I don't think anyone on our staff is a landscape architect or consultant. So that's why I really would like Parker to review this and maybe elaborate and increase the landscape list that you have on there. But he's an expert. I think he'll know best what plants can go in the swale, and then, like I said, the different trees, different sizes on the property side, upper side of the swale. I think that would be a really good thing to have him review. The oak trees, I do, because that's got brought up. I'm trying to understand, because we have our tree canopy initiatives that we're working towards, and if oak trees aren't allowed, how are we achieving that?
There is a statement in there though about if it's a village approved project that we can plant. So there's a statement in that code that says that, and that's what that's for, is if there is because we're gonna make sure it's engineered, right? Like, we're gonna make sure it's not hitting utilities. We're gonna make sure it stays out of the swale. We're gonna bring you guys a project like which is what we did with the other 60 trees we did. We made, Parker, did it, and then you guys said, all right, approved project, let's do it. And so that's how we would do planting of more oak trees through that part of the code.
And that's to get that true canopy. But someone can still plant an oak right on that, right outside that right-of-way line on their property side. So we're not saying no oak trees, just no oak trees in the right-of-way, of course. So, and I just know.
In the swale, you could potentially put an oak tree in the right-of-way, right? If you're outside the swale.
Shouldn't then the oak tree would have to be, so the top of swale only, we'd have to add the oak tree to that.
We can add an oak tree to that if you have the room in the right of way and you're outside the swale.
I would like that, yeah, because I've been driving around and looking, especially at new construction homes that have complied with the swale policy as it's written now, and aesthetically it doesn't look bad. So I do think there's this rhetoric out there that it's going to look horrible, but when I look at some of these new construction homes that have followed our code, and they have trees right on the outside of the right of way, it looks fine. It looks pleasant. I don't think this is really going to destroy the aesthetics of our community, especially when we are going to be allowing the right plants in the right of way. I really appreciate the enhanced public education campaign. We can talk about that if this thing gets finalized. I don't think this is gonna be ready for March. I'll just throw that out there right now. I think council will have to workshop it one more time. I know the routine maintenance, like if we're replacing a mailbox like for like, I don't think someone should have to pull a permit for that. And I know a resident has sent us a clause from the town of Jupiter if it was like under $500 or something. I might have that dollar amount wrong, that they didn't have to pull a permit. Could you check that town of Jupiter code? I thought that was a nice clause.
Well, when you put a shovel in the ground in the right of way, whether you're a homeowner, whether you're a village employee, you're required to call 811 for locates, right? So when you put a shovel in the ground and we're not educating a homeowner, they're gonna start digging in the right of way. If they damage utilities without calling in locates, without contacting the village, right, without a permit, and they break a line, they're now responsible and liable for that break, whatever that might be.
Right, of
Now,
course.
in some cases, you know, maybe there's gonna be anything by that mailbox, but some folks are digging 3 foot down and putting a post in the ground or a metal sleeve in the ground. Potentially hit a fiber optic cable, right? An AT&T cable, an FP&L fiber optic line. So there are requirements anytime you put a shovel in the ground in the right of way. Now folks don't do it on their private property, but if you don't know where you're putting a shovel, you risk damaging pipe on your own property, whether it's your Comcast, your AT&T, or your water line that's going to your house, your sanitary sewer pipe, you're taking that risk without calling in locates. So there are certain requirements that digging a mailbox in the ground. Now, if you have a sleeve there and you're just pulling out the post and putting it in without digging, that's different. But once you put a shovel in the ground in the right of way, there are requirements. The very first is a permit. The second is that you're calling in 811 locates to find out what's in the area. So you're not damaging underground utilities. That's a huge liability.
Right. Can we just look at that town of Jupiter? I know you have it, Jeremy, I forwarded it to you. So let's just take a look at it and see if it's something we can consider. On the asphalt.
Can I add something to that? So even we get into like the fees, I mean, we can do all that with no cost fees. Like if you think we can define what minor adjustment are, but the important thing is they pull a permit. That way we can review it, we can help the resident. We don't want to change the swale profile and now all of a sudden water's going out into the road, those types of things. So I think we'll look at that code, and I mean the fee's not the important thing. The review is the important thing, which the fee covers the review part of it. But and we can define, Doug's already, we've already talked a little bit about some of these minor maintenance things, you know, defining that a little better, and you know, if there's no fee. And Mayor, I know you're aware of this, we've had this conversation, you know, the state is looking to preempt or prevent local governments from charging a permit fee for anything under $7,500. Not saying that they can't do a permit, like we can require a permit, we just can't charge for it for under $7,500. I don't know if it'll pass or not a bad idea, you know, these minor things that don't cost anything. We don't necessarily have to charge them. That's a council decision, and you know we can bring back those, you know, for a decision. But I think the important thing is, and I'll say this, I was going to save it till the end, but you know, right now our code, you have to pull a permit. That's nothing new. That's not what the attorney and Doug and I and Allison have put together. Our code calls for that today. Our code also says that in the swale, that, and this goes back, we found documents from the 90s, that you can't plant trees, hedges, things in the swale. So you can't do that today. So if we do nothing with this code, our staff is going to fall back on that. So I think we've done a really good job listening from the last workshop of trying to allow for these things. I know I hear it from council, hear it from the residents. We're trying to allow for it. I can agree. We do need to, we can change some language, clean it up. I think that's great. What in our eyes, when we heard it, it made sense to us. But you know, when I hear it from Rick saying it or Mr. Sartori, yeah, it does need cleaned up. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. But just want to make sure that everybody understood where we stand today is that we don't allow that in the right of way. How we got there, you know, that's debatable. We don't know. But our code today, and I think the important thing is when we heard council is when you go as a resident should you have, if you just go like, I want to look at my right of way, I want to plant something, should you be able to go somewhere, look in our code and find out what that is? Or do you have to go, bother staff or take the time of your day to do that? Like, we're trying to make a document that you can open up and go like, all right, I want to do this, this, and this. Now I'm going to tell my landscape architect what I want to do. We're trying to create that document to make it very easy for residents. Can we add some stuff? Sure. I mean, can we have our landscape architects? Good idea. Like, those are the things that I think that's what this workshop is about. And so not scrapping everything, not, throwing it all away, because I think we're doing a good job of trying to implement these things that today we can't do. Today, the resident can't do those things. And so we're trying to do it. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was saving a lot of that stuff, but it seemed like a good opportunity. So.
No, I made that point at the beginning because I probably had Jeremy pulling his hair out when I was talking to a constituent. It's like, I was in all these different codes, and I was like reading stuff from the 90s. I'm like, this is like, this can't be this confusing for our community when they're doing work. And like I said, this is actually, our code right now is more restrictive than this. So this is going to be a benefit once we make these tweaks and get it to a place that we're all comfortable with. On the asphalt transitions, I'm trying to visually, the concrete footer between the road and the driveway for an asphalt driveway, that makes sense. I can visualize that. A concrete swale section, what is that going to look like in the asphalt driveway? I can't picture that.
Black and white.
Well, obviously, but like, is it like I'm trying to understand. So I don't know, is this part of the I think this is part of the resolution. Is it
Where are you
attached
at?
to the resolution?
What page resolution?
Yeah, so go to the resolution and then on
Right
page
now, the
29 of 49.
The code doesn't allow asphalt through the right of way.
Right, so this is
So we
going to allow
have a
it.
few residents that still have asphalt driveways.
Yeah.
And so the code only allows concrete and pavers in the village right of way.
Correct.
Doesn't make sense for somebody who's redoing their driveway with asphalt, allow them to go all the way to the road with asphalt.
Yep, I don't disagree.
So that's the intent, that's the sole intent of that. However, if you have sidewalk, right, we're planning to put sidewalk in there, we're not putting asphalt sidewalk in, we're putting concrete, right? We're not putting pavers, we're putting concrete. So if somebody wants to do their driveway, rebuild their driveway in asphalt, when they get to the right of way, that has to remain concrete from the sidewalk to the road.
Right, I support adding this asphalt resolution for those certain conditions, but if you go to page 29 of 49, it talks about the transitions with a concrete footer and a concrete swale section, and the swale crossing, it talks about reinforced concrete swale section or culvert crossing. Is that going to be, it says a transition, so to me a transition you visually see, or if there's concrete swale structure, does the asphalt go over that? I'm trying to
Correct.
visually understand what that's going to look like in the swale.
Right now, if you put pavers in your driveway, right?
But how does asphalt
Once you get into the right of way, you have to put a concrete footer under those pavers to protect the road and to protect the right of way.
Correct.
Same with concrete. When you put in concrete, obviously they're digging to the 12-inch depth and across the road. So what we're saying is if you're going to put asphalt to the road, under the asphalt, you have to put a concrete footer against the road. Same as we would do for concrete or pavers, so you're protecting the edge of the road. Typically where residents have a problem is at the entrance to their driveway, that transition from the road into their driveway, especially when you have asphalt or you have pavers. That's typically where you see the pavers settle and collapse, or you see the asphalt crack and collapse.
Correct.
And you'll have the road crack. You see a lot of homes throughout the village that the edge of the road is cracked across all the driveways. And that's
Right.
just from
So the
sheer
concrete
traffic.
footer, I understand, and that makes
Right.
sense to me. It's the swale section that's not.
Right.
So I don't know. Is anyone looking at this and following what I'm trying to say?
Are you saying the swale and the driveway portion? So the swale
Yeah,
and
so
the concrete
it's written
swale.
right here, the swale cross construction, you have a reinforced concrete swale section, which the swale is not, the concrete footer where it terminates the road is one thing. The swale is above that into the property.
Right.
where the swale is, it's saying that there has to be a culvert crossing, a concrete swale section, or concrete swale section, and with the asphalt, I'm trying to understand. I don't think I've seen that, so I'm trying to understand what that is.
Just building a swale with the asphalt. I have to go back and take a look.
So then this needs cleaned up too.
Maybe that language needs to be cleared
Okay.
up, but you're basically just building a swale with the asphalt, the same you would with concrete or pavers.
So that needs corrected then. The concrete footer, yes, leave that.
Right.
But the concrete swale stuff, then revisit that, and then it sounds like it needs to be removed.
But basically what you're saying too is no more asphalt driveway. So once someone replaces their asphalt driveway, they can't replace it with another asphalt driveway.
No.
No, they
No,
can.
so it's really just those driveways where we left.
No
We
side,
do
no
have them.
sidewalk, and yeah.
You can replace your driveway with asphalt if you have asphalt. You choose to replace it with asphalt. But when you get into the right of way, that has to be concrete.
Yes.
If there's sidewalk there, or there's planned, we're gonna put a section of sidewalk here in this community, then you would be required to have concrete.
Okay, I have, on section, this is of the swale ordinance, so under section 63-2B, does irrigation need to be added to that? Because you list trees, shrubs, signs, mailboxes, planters, ornamental decorations. People put irrigation in the right of way, right? Can we add that just so it's clear? And then I think I brought this up at the workshop. I don't know that I saw it in the ordinance draft here. What about mulch or rock in the right of way, if we allow it or not? And if we do, how do we prevent it from getting washed out into the...
It's not currently allowed in the current code or the new code.
Is there a reason? Mulch I can see is because I can get washed out pretty easy and get washed in the roadway or get washed in the storm system. What about rock? Why is rock not allowed?
Well, rock and gravel can, depending on, the incoming rain event, can also wash into your catch basins and your pipe, and so we don't want loose rocks and gravel in the right of way. We want solid structures, either turf, and the driveways, concrete, pavers. These are solid structures.
I understand what you're saying, but we have new properties that have rock in the right of way. So now I'm just confused on the hypocrisy being said. So this is why I get confused when I read this entire package.
Well, when I go out and I inspect, and do my inspection in the right of way, in the driveway, we're not allowing rock. And I know the utilities department is not allowing rock in the swale, in the grass.
Okay, I understand like pebbles, but not even like the larger, like white river rock that's like 3 to 4 inches.
We're not approving that, so we'd have to take a look at that.
Okay.
Is that, because that's kind of be a aesthetic feature. I think the landscape architect could look at that too, and maybe like, is there a certain size that's appropriate that would not get washed away? Just have a look
Actually,
at
there's
it.
another property that has the big black ones. They're larger rocks, they're not pebbles. And those haven't moved for a couple years. So that just needs to be, I agree, that needs to be clarified and cleaned up.
But then I'm thinking too though, like what if we have a bunch of rock right-of-ways? That would not look good.
Are you saying for the entire swale or right of way to be rock, or just as that aesthetic lining to have different levels? You're saying the entire...
Basically your entire...
There's a couple homes that I can think of off the top of my head that
Because they do. They will, like if we have large rains and the water is literally rushing down the road, because it's one of those massive rainfalls, it could push some of that into the drain. So I get what you're saying.
It's going to end up in your storm system and your pipe.
Okay.
We'll look at some zero scaping options as an option. I don't know what that looks like because I'm not a landscape architect, but we can look at that. But today, I'm pretty sure our code says no non-living material in the right-of-way. I'm pretty sure it says that. I'd have to go back and look at it because I know we had some different code cases for that. But currently, we shouldn't be permitting those. Now, if there are, we can look at those, and that's like I said, how it got there, I don't know, but. We're just trying to correct the wrongs of the past, I think. So.
Okay, well again, truly thank you for your efforts. This is a good goal to be working towards. It's much needed. You heard a lot of feedback from us. We're probably gonna hear some public comment and we can tune this up. And I do, like I said, I do think we need a workshop. I would personally like to workshop it one more time before it goes, because the next step would be LPA and then us, correct?
Yeah, just so you're aware, this will have to go in front of your P&Z board for their review as well and recommendations.
Right.
But we'll bring it back to you guys first for another shot at, see if we can tighten up some of that language that Mr. Sartori brought up. And some of the other comments, we'll bring it back to you guys. And, you know, this is good discussion for us and gives us some good direction to look at.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. Any public comment cards?
Marie Superior.
Maria in the Country Club. This 13-page proposal, the way it's written, should actually be one sentence. What it does in effect say is that residents and businesses may put sod grass in the right-of-way with a permit, and the village may, at the sole discretion of the Director of Public Works, put in a tree which won't be in the swale portion of the right-of-way. That is the actual effect of this proposal, and I'm happy to walk you through, but I'd take up way more than like 3 minutes doing that. Instead, we have 13 pages that superficially suggest that landscaping that involves plants on the approved list might be allowed, but in fact it is not. This proposal doesn't merely make it hard to put plants in the right-of-way, it makes it impossible. In fact, the way this proposal is written, it would require a permit to trim a bush or even to mow the grass. This is because the proposal has so many caveats and requirements and, frankly, unusual definitions that overlap and conflict in its attempt to ensure complete and total control over not only the function of the swales, but also the aesthetics of the rights-of-way. It is not possible for a resident to know that even if they design a beautiful landscape plan for the right-of-way area in front of their home or business, that the village would approve it based on this plan. I would be happy to explain exactly why that is the effect that this proposed code has, but because my time is limited and this is a very long draft, I will not, unless you would like me to. But I want to underscore that it is not possible for a resident to read this proposed code and know what it is that they would need to do in order to prepare a landscape request permit application for anything other than sod grass that would meet with village approval. And that is not right. This proposal doesn't require tweaks, it requires a complete overhaul. If the village staff needs additional cooperation from residents in helping to maintain the function of the swales, then there are much better ways to achieve that goal. I think I can speak for my neighbors in saying that residents want the swales and the entire stormwater system they are part of to function properly. No one wants their home, their neighbor's home, local businesses, or any streets in the village to flood. But this goal of protecting the swales and the infrastructure is not achieved by insisting that residents have sod and only sod, nor is it achieved by handing residents a short list of approved plants and onerous requirements that actually cannot be met in the literal terms of this proposal for their placement. The approach to trees in this proposal is similarly unacceptable. The tree size and root barrier requirements are unnecessarily onerous. Every tree or large plant does not need a root barrier to protect sidewalks or pipes, and in fact, pipes are not endangered by trees at all if they are not already broken and leaking. In many cases, these types of requirements will just be an unnecessary cost and deterrent to planting trees which are needed in the village and which it is your duty to promote under the comp plan. I ask you to please reject this proposal in full and direct staff to look to the existing swale policy from 2019 for overall excellent, easy to implement principles to protect the swales and the aesthetics of the village, and to potentially add language similar to Jupiter's code provision in section 20-278 to ensure that the intended uses of swales are protected. Thank you. If you would like me to walk you through line by line, I'm happy to do that. It'd take me a little while.
Thank you, Marie.
Thank you, Marie.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you.
Any other public comment? No? Kimberly, yes? Come up and state your name and address again, please.
Kimberly Windish, 72 Yacht Club Place. I did not intend to talk, but I have my eye on every property in Tequesta Country Club. I drive almost by every property probably 3 or 4 times a day. I'm building a spec. I have other renovations. There's a house on Goffview Drive who this year or last year put in an entire rock driveway from the road, the whole big circle, So I didn't read what your code was as opposed to the new code, but it has not been followed whatsoever. People have clusia hedges that have just been recently planted literally about a foot from the roadway all around their properties. So code enforcement's not doing their job, and this is why the residents are upset. Also, I think, Laura, you might know this. Back in June, when everybody got those notices that were very aggressive about the turf and didn't realize they weren't allowed to have turf in the right of way, the residents in Tequesta Country Club, if you could go back and we could print them, you could read them, people do not understand right of ways. And I was trying to be kind, I took a survey that I have of a house in Gloughview that I'm renovating. And I took a red pencil, a red marker, and I took the survey and I drew out the right of way. And I commented it, and put it back to try to explain it. Nobody cared, nobody commented, and it was really crazy how many people said, oh, I looked it up, it's 10 feet, it's this, it's that. And people didn't understand the right of way. I can tell you, I don't know if you read it or not, but I could go back and find it. So the public is not as educated as some of you think they are. So you've got to do a better job at that, and it's not anybody's fault in this room. I think if you live in a house for a really long time and you are not doing any renovations and you're not in building or you're not in real estate or you're not looking at things, you don't know that you're not allowed to plan. And I'm not trying to cover up excuses for people, but I'm just telling you what I see from the public. But, like Vince Arena's house, he's had rocks to the road for years. I'm not ever sure why that ever happened. There's other places in Tequesta Country Club that have rocks, huge amount of rocks, big white rocks that are very dangerous if kids fall off their bikes on them from the side of their house all the way to the road. So I think that's where the confusion is coming from the residents. That's it.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, any other public comment? Okay. All right, with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Marianne, thank you for this. You're my last one. Tax form.
Oh yeah, I just started printing all my documents this weekend. I got my folder going.
I'll get what there's like a hate on app mark that I don't until like September or something.
Well, we have funky ones.
I don't even start.
Right?
Yeah.
Like early February now.
This always seems to be.
I got some things that